Let's start new chapter in statistics, collection of data. Yes, synopsis, introduction, primary and secondary data, methods of collecting primary data, sources of secondary data. Introduction, data collection is a term used to describe a process of preparing and collection data, systematic gathering of data for a particular purpose from various sources that has been systematically observed, recorded, organized. Data are the basic inputs to any decision-making process in business. Classification of data, types of data. One, primary data, and second one, secondary data. Let's see the first one, primary data. Primary data is the data which is originally collected by the investigator or agency for the first time for some specific purpose. Yes. So, the sources from which the primary data is collected, it's called primary sources. See, for example, population census conducted by Government of India. Such data is original in character as it is collected for the first time. It is first-hand information. When primary data once collected and published becomes secondary data. Now, let's move on to the next one, secondary data. The data which is not directly collected but rather obtained from the published or unpublished sources is known as secondary data. Example, National Account Statistics published by the CSO, Economic Survey published by Government of India. It is also known as second-hand data. These are not original data since the enumerators or the investigators themselves do not collect this data. They simply make use of the data collected by the others. It's called secondary data. Now let's move on to methods of collecting primary data. Direct personal investigation, indirect oral investigation, yes, information from local sources, information through questionnaires, mailing method, enumerators methods. Let's start with the first one, direct personal investigation. Here, the interviewer collects the data personally from the respondents. Yes, and thus the data are reliable, but here the data may be influenced by a personal prejudices of the interviewer. So, the investigator goes to the field personally, contact the respondents and convince them in giving the information under study. So, the investigator or the interviewer has the opportunity of explaining the study and answering the query of the respondents. Let's move on to the next one, indirect oral investigation. The information is collected indirectly from a third person called a witness. See, for example, information regarding the use of intoxicants, drugs, alcohol, etc. The reliability of the data depends on the integrity and honesty of the witness. Yes, so under this method, the investigator approached the third party who are in the possession of information about the subject of inquiry. Yes, so this method is used when the area of investigation is very large or the respondents are reluctant to part with the information due to various reasons. The investigator prepare a small list of questions which relating to the investigation, and this question are asked from direct person and the answers are recorded. Yes, the person to whom this question are put are known as witness. This types of inquiry is usually conducted by the police department and inquiry committees appointed by the government. Information from correspondents. Yes, under this method, local agents or correspondents are appointed and trained to collect the information from the respondents. So, under this method, the local agents or correspondents are appointed and trained to collect the information from the respondent. This method of collecting primary data is used when the information at regular intervals of time is to be collected from different places. So agents or correspondents regularly collect the data in their jurisdiction and send them to the investigator. So this method is often adopted by the newspaper and periodicals for information about politics, business, prices, agricultural and industrial output, stock markets, etc. Telephonic interview. Information is collected through a telephone. Sometimes respondents respond better than in a face-to-face interview. So under this method, data is collected through an interview over the telephone with the interviewer. Yes, so the telephonic interview is better in the cases where the respondent are reluctant to answer certain questions in personal interviews. Mailed questionnaire method. Investigator prepare a questionnaire regarding the area of study and along with the covering letter, send it to the respondent to be mailed back with the answer. So under this method, the investigator makes a questionnaire pertaining to the field of investigation and send it to the respondent along with the covering letter to collect information from them. So a questionnaire consists of list of questions pertaining to the investigation. Blank space are left for writing answers. Usually, self-addressed stamped envelope is enclosed for returning the questionnaire by post. Respondents are assured of the secrecy of the information supplied by them. This method is adopted by research workers and other official and non-official agencies. Questionnaire filled by the enumerator. Under this method, the enumerator personally visit informants along with the questionnaire, ask questions and note down their replies in the questionnaire in its own language. So the enumerator assesses the informants to understand the true nature of questions, fills up the schedule himself to avoid vague and ambiguous replies. Yes, so these are the methods of primary data. Yes, direct personal investigation, indirect oral investigation. Yes, third one, information from correspondents. Fourth, telephonic interview. Fifth, mailed questionnaire method. Next one, questionnaire is filled by the enumerators. Let's move to the other one. Census method, sampling method. The first one, meaning when statistical investigation is conducted wherein the data is collected from each and every element of the population in the census method. In the sampling method, when only representative population is selected and information is collected from them. Example, demographic survey of a nation. The example for the sampling method is market survey, behavioral study, yes, opinion polls. Nature of inquiry. Extensive inquiry is conducted as each and every unit of population is studied. In case of sampling method, limited inquiry is conducted as only few units of population are studied. Economy, in census method, it required large amount of money, time and labor. In case of sampling method, relatively less money, time, labor needed. Suitability in the census method, it is more suitable if the population is heterogeneous in nature. In case of sampling method, it is more suitable if the population is homogeneous in nature. Next, reliability and accuracy. Results are quite reliable and accurate under census method. In case of sampling method, under sampling method, results are less reliable and accurate. Basis for nature of error. The only error that may arise in the collection of data is the error of bias. In case of sampling method gives rise to error of sampling apart from error of bias. Yes, so this is a difference between census method as well as the sampling method. Now, sources of secondary data. Yes. So, sources of secondary data. The source of secondary data can broadly be classified into two heads. 1. Published sources. 2. Unpublished sources. Yes. So important published source of secondary data are official publication of state and central government, semi-government publication, that is local self-governments, reports of committees and commissions, that is educational reform, publication of research institutions and individual, that is agricultural research and organization, international publication, WTO, UNO, private publication, that is Institute of Economic Growth, stock exchanges, publication of trade association, at the last newspaper and magazines. So these are the important published sources of secondary data. Now let's move on to the unpublished sources. Data collected and stored away for the organization use in the form of files, records and documents. We'll be calling it as a unpublished sources of data. So far we have saw about an intro of collection of data. Yes, and types of data, primary data and secondary data. And then what are the methods of primary data? Yes, direct personal investigation and indirect oral investigation, mailed questionnaire method, etc. So we have saw all such things. And then we have discussed about census method and sampling method. And at the last, sources of secondary data, published sources and unpublished sources. Yes, now it's time for recapitulate the topic with few assessments. The first question, the quickest method to collect primary data is? Options are direct personal investigation, indirect oral investigation, telephone interview, mailed questionnaire method. Your time start now. Yes, the answer is telephone interview. Let's move on to the second question. Which method of collection of data cover the wide area? Yes, the widest area. The options are given: telephonic interview method, mailed questionnaire method, direct interview method, all of this. So what is the answer? Your time start now. Yes, the answer is mailed questionnaire method. Thank you, students.